Hey YNR fans! Waving hand, welcome to YNR Trends, your go-to spot for the juiciest Young and the Restless updates, shocking spoilers, and all the drama you can't stop talking about. From surprise returns to scandalous twists, we break it all down for you, every day. So grab your coffee, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive right into Genoa City's hottest gossip. According to spoilers for the week of August 18th to 22nd on The Young and the Restless, Lily Winters will engage in a risky Kane Ashby game, and Nick and Sharon Newman will encounter a romantic roadblock. First of all, Lily's choice to play with Kane's feelings can backfire. Perhaps the illusory hope Lily will give Kane won't be so ill after all, as it appears that she will be manipulating her own feelings in the process. Lily has been trying to convince herself that her relationship with her ex is permanent, but she can't help but feel a connection to Kane. Lily is drawn to Kane and their lengthy relationship despite everything that transpired in Nice. Despite Lily's best efforts to maintain her composure, it will be simple for her to revert to a familiar routine with Kane. This will be a risky game overall because Lily will still try to influence Kane over the specifics of his plan. Things could blow up in multiple ways if Kane finds out. Speaking of blow-ups, Chelsea Lawson and Adam Newman will need to resolve their disagreement over Billy Abbott. Adam will grow increasingly irritated with Chelsea's attempts to justify and protect Billy. Kane might question Billy's loyalty in the interim and subject him to further interrogation. If Kane becomes suspicious, Billy's plan to work as an insider for Jack Abbott may come to a halt, especially if Phyllis Summers is whispering in Kane's ear. Jack, for his part, will hope Billy can make this work. Diane Jenkins Abbott will shortly throw a lavish honeymoon celebration, so Jack will also be in for a surprise. According to YNR spoilers, Nick and Sharon will then experience a relationship setback. Nick's obsession with assisting the Newmans in their fight against Kane would divert his attention from Sharon and demonstrate to her his dark side. Claire Newman will have to make a choice as Nate Hastings returns from Chicago. Will Claire continue to be honest with Nate about all of Audra Charles's shady Kyle Abbott schemes? Since Audra has sworn war on Claire, if Claire destroys her relationship with Nate, she might take action to stop her competitor or at the very least strike back right away. Lastly, Sally Spectra will welcome her role as Abbott Communications boss, but there will be challenges to overcome. As Billy concentrates on his quest to become chancellor, he will need to adjust to giving Sally greater authority. According to teasers for The Young and the Restless, the week of August 18th to 22nd will be full of surprises and exciting news. Keep checking back for more on all the drama in Genoa City. That night, the rain was falling more heavily than normal over Genoa City, and the streets were slippery and gleaming in the faint light from the street lamps. Lily Winters watched drips slide down the glass as she stood by her apartment window with her arms crossed. She wasn't sure whether the cold she was experiencing was caused by the weather or the strategy she had been working on for weeks. Even when she promised herself she was done with Kane Ashby, he always managed to get under her skin. Now, though, it was more than just love or hate. It was about survival, control, and leverage. Kane didn't make mistakes by accident, and she had discovered this the hard way. She knew it was Kane because every slip and every misstep was usually planned. Lately, she had noticed a pattern: calls that ended when she answered, unexpected encounters with strangers who appeared to know her name, and that mysterious text from a blocked number that said, simply, "He's closer than you think." She was aware that he was attempting to re-engage her, and worse, she felt a strong desire to do so. That was dangerous because whatever he could use against her was just as much of a weapon as her own emotions. She had spotted him outside Crimson Lights 2 weeks prior. With that enigmatic half-smile on his face and a coffee cup in his hand, he had observed from across the street without approaching. That was enough to make her heart race. After that disaster with Damien and the Dumas identity, Kane had disappeared for months, but suddenly he was back, scuttling around the town. The exchange was brief but impactful when she eventually confronted him in Chancellor Park. With a stronger tone than she meant, she admonished him, "You're playing a dangerous game." His eyes were fixed on hers as he responded in a quiet murmur. Lily, it's only risky if you lose. I also never lose. Since then, their tension has been like a lighted fuse, neither of them is ready to back off, knowing that it could blow up at any moment. However, Lily was no longer naive. She didn't want to repeat history without putting herself in a better position because she had already been burnt by Kane. So, discreetly and silently, she started gathering information. What he wanted from her this time, who he was meeting, and where he was staying. She gradually started to see the wider picture. She wasn't the only reason Kane returned. She held the secret to the much greater purpose for which he had returned. Kane knew her too well, though. He would occasionally appear in the most unlikely places, such as standing behind the GCAC lobby, sitting against the railing at Society while she and Devon were having lunch, or sneaking into the bookstore where she perused when she wanted some time to reflect. Never stops observing. He was never far enough away to remind her that he was back in her life. However, his control made him more deadly because he never pushed too much. You only exhibited that kind of patience when you were certain that you would win the game. Lily made the decision to do more than just play defense at that point. She would be the first to move. In order to begin piecing together the links between Kane's abrupt reappearance and a string of shell company transfers that had begun around the same time, she contacted a contact in the Chancellor Winter's legal department who owed her a favor and requested some financial records. Nothing too clear. Although it was risky, she would have something useful if she could connect him to those transactions. Something he couldn't get out of by lying or charm alone. The problem was that the truth got more complicated the more she dug. She had papers strewn out on her desk one evening when her phone buzzed with a text from an unidentified number. It was a picture this time, not a secret. A blurry picture of her walking to her car after work earlier that day. The timing was from half an hour after her departure. Her stomach fell. Kane was letting her know that he was keeping a closer eye on her than she knew. She ought to have been afraid. She was afraid, she told herself. However, the same rush of excitement that she had experienced years before, when their relationship had been on the verge of ruin, came flooding back. In actuality, she was addicted to the game itself and wasn't merely attempting to defeat Kane. Kane was aware of that. It was nearly too good to be true when they met again at Society. When she entered, he had that annoying sneer on his face and was seated at the bar. She got a drink, slid onto the stool next to him, and looked him in the eyes without blinking. She remarked, "You're making it too easy." "Or perhaps you're making it too difficult for yourself," he said with a slick reply. The ensuing exchange was laced with significance that neither of them explicitly expressed. On the board, every word was a move. Each glance was a step closer to perilous terrain. By the time she departed, she understood that she was challenging Kane to decide what to do next, not merely outwitting him. Kane already had, which Lily was unaware of at the time. The idea behind Lily's dangerous Kane game offers a complex and multidimensional story that may be examined from a number of angles, such as literary, social, and psychological ones. Lily's employment of a cane as a physical instrument and a symbolic object serves as the narrative's central focus, seemingly revolving around themes of risk, power dynamics, and human agency. Deeper investigation into the motivations of the characters and the wider ramifications of their actions is encouraged by the game's perilous nature, which raises the possibility of an underlying tension involving manipulation, control, or self-destruction. The uncertainty surrounding the nature of the game itself is among Lily's dangerous Kane game's most striking features. Is it a metaphor for a more significant, existential conflict, or is it a real game with rules and stakes? Traditionally used as a sign of stability and support, the cane is twisted into a tool of danger, suggesting a violation of social standards. This inversion might symbolize Lily's defiance of social norms, her struggle with trauma, or perhaps a critique of how others take advantage of their weaknesses. Strength and frailty frequently coexist in human nature, and the cane's dual character as a tool and a danger reflects this complexity. Psychologically speaking, Lily's participation in a risky game might be an indication of more serious unconscious issues. If the game is self-destructive, it may be a coping strategy that verges on masochism or internalized suffering. On the other hand, if the threat is external, it may indicate a demand for order in a chaotic environment. The act of transforming a cane, a device intended to provide assistance, into something dangerous illustrates how humans can change, for better or worse. It calls into doubt Lily's agency. Is she the mastermind behind her own game, or is she ensnared in a bigger system that compels her to act recklessly? The story probably examines the thin line between self-sabotage and empowerment, thus there is a noticeable psychological tension here. Socioculturally speaking, Lily's dangerous cane game may be seen as a critique of the way society views and handles people who use assistive technology. The cane, which is frequently connected to aging or disability, is reframed as a powerful tool that challenges perceptions of weakness. In a society that frequently disregards her agency, Lily's risky game might be a protest against infantilization or sympathy if she is a disabled character. On the other hand, the story might be making a statement about how individuals use symbols of vulnerability to control or threaten others if the cane is only a prop in a broader metaphorical game. The game's perilous element might thus stand in for the social repercussions of such manipulations, how people who are thought to be helpless might exercise power in surprising ways. In a literal sense, Lily's dangerous cane game's narrative structure probably uses ambiguity and tension to draw the reader in. The game's lack of explicit rules or goals reflects life's inherent unpredictability, where risks are present and results are never assured. As a recurrent theme, the cane would serve as a symbol that is up for interpretation as well as a Chekhov's pistol, an early introduced object that acquires significance later. The narrative may alternate between poetic depictions of the cane's motions and tense, sharp passages where the danger is evident. The stakes of the game, whether existential, emotional, or physical, would propel the story along while leaving the reader wondering about Lily's ultimate goal. The narrative may explore the nature of games and how they function as miniature representations of human interaction. By definition, games have rules, consequences, and winners and losers. If Lily's game is risky, it implies that there will be serious, potentially life-altering repercussions. This might be similar to situations in the real world where people act in high-stakes ways in their personal, professional, or romantic relationships. As a result, the cane comes to represent the random instruments people employ to play these games, sometimes breaking them and other times bending them to suit their needs. The reader may be prompted by the story to reflect on the games they play and the costs involved. The examination of treachery and trust in Lily's dangerous cane game provides a further potential viewpoint. The cane might serve as a symbol of trust that is eventually turned into a weapon if there are several players in the game. Broken alliances, ulterior motives, or the general unpredictable nature of people could be the source of the threat. If there are other participants, Lily's connection with them would be essential to determining whether the game is a test of loyalty, a contest of cunning, or a spiral into anarchy. The cane would represent the changing dynamics of trust when it is handed between hands or utilized as a deceptive tool. Another important factor in determining the meaning of the story is its environment. A cramped, nearly dramatic setting, such as a darkened chamber, a deserted building, or a remote garden, would intensify the feeling of claustrophobia and certain fate. With the cane serving as both a real and figurative means of navigation, the surroundings may reflect Lily's inner state. On the other hand, if the game takes place in several different places, the cane could act as a constant, a reminder of the danger that follows Lily wherever. These spatial dynamics would highlight the difference between the cane's traditional function, support, and its role in the game, danger. Lily's dangerous cane game may challenge the philosophical distinction between determinism and free agency. Is Lily actually in charge of the game, or is she constrained by its guidelines and unable to change its course? This duality, the notion that the very things that aid us can also harm us, could be represented by the cane, an object that both supports and puts us in danger. The game's perilous elements may thus stand in for life's inherent dangers, where every decision has consequences and every safety net could turn into a weapon. The impact of the story would be greatly influenced by its tone. The game's perilous aspect would be complemented by a dark, tense tone that would keep the reader on edge as they guess what will happen next. As an alternative, a more reflective, depressing tone can highlight Lily's inner conflicts, using the cane game as an outward representation of her anguish. The text could be flowing and dreamy, making it difficult to distinguish between metaphor and reality, or it could be precise and cutting, reflecting the game's deliberate dangers. To sum up, Lily's Dangerous Cane Game is a story full of opportunities for interpretation. The story's main theme, the cane as both support and danger, is a potent symbol, regardless of whether it is read as a literary examination of risk and agency, a social remark, or a psychiatric study. The perilous game Lily engages in forces the reader to think about the lines separating strength and fragility, control and chaos, and how people negotiate the unstable terrain of their life. Long after the last move is made, the spectator is left wondering since the game itself lacks definitive answers or explanations, reflecting the complexities of human experience.